Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on the 2016 Doctor Who Christmas special, The Return of Dr. Mysterio. And holy hell, man, I kind of feel like, as a Whovian, I kind of feel like the last several years of Doctor Who episodes, there are certain episodes that feel like they're written very much for a person like me. I'm totally a comic book and comic book movie fan, a fan of superheroes, that entire genre. You can kind of make out, the Avengers back here. Over here, you've got the single greatest superhero ever created in all of fiction, Superman, aka Clark Kent, Kal-El of Krypton. And this episode makes no mistake about borrowing a large level of influence from that Clark Kent Superman dynamic, and I was just on the floor in love with it. I loved every dripping second of this particular episode for that. I mean, it's not only Superman, you also get references to Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. The Doctor utters that very line to Grant, this alter ego of the superhero in this particular episode, the Ghost. As well as, you see a Batman poster on his wall as a kid, and the character of Lucy, who is the sort of Lois Lane-esque character, reporter chick. She's, mentioning the bat signal. Oh, it's like a beeper that the Ghost has, and all this kind of stuff. And the Doctor gets his own superhero name, Dr. Mysterio, which actually hails to, I think, the Brazilian equivalent of Doctor Who is called Dr. Mysterio. And I read an interview with Peter Capaldi saying, he actually really loved that the show has this as a title. And he's like, yeah, I'll have that in the episode. The Doctor's completely, he loves that. So I loved it too. I cannot speak to how much I loved this episode. I did have mild trepidation about Matt Lucas's Nardole being such a big part of the story. I mean, his character left a little to be desired. I just kind of, he felt like a background character meant just for the fun of it, like jokes and things of that sort. Matt Lucas, I loved him in Little Britain. I loved a lot of the characters he brought forth in that, and I know he's a good performer. So I kind of, held my reservations at bay, went into this, and when we first see him, he's kind of infantile as a character and not very endearing to me right away. He's kind of kooky, he's kind of funny, but it kind of just rubs me the wrong way at the start of the story. It's kind of the Nardole we've already seen, but I feel like his character evolves through the course of this episode to be a little bit more than that. There's actually more flesh and blood to his character that actually did very much endear me by the end. The idea that he's kind of this guide to the Doctor in a sense, or a protector of the Doctor's hearts in a manner of speaking. The idea that the Doctor is still very much in mourning. And at first, you could kind of think, oh, well, is he still missing Clara? Well, no, Clara's kind of sort of out there. Maybe he doesn't know, whatever like that. He's still feeling the sting of the loss of River Song, which of course goes back to last year's Christmas special, where he had to finally say goodbye. The 12th Doctor was the incarnation to say goodbye to her. And I love that we got that peppered throughout the course of this. Even Grant, even the Ghost, even Lucy, they are all, empathic enough to be in touch with the idea that there's something bothering the Doctor. There's something that is not being said that is an underpinning aspect to the way he's behaving and thinking and doing things. And, I love that it calls back to River Song, someone who leaves such a grand void. We're talking about a man who's lost so many companions over the years, who lost his family, who lost his, sort of spin-off daughter, Jenny, and all these kinds of things. I mean, here is a guy who his one constant companion is loss, is, the moving on of time. And he had been away, apparently, as we gather through the dialogue of this episode, for 24 years. He'd been gone from Earth for 24 years, having just left after trying to set up a sort of equalization matrix for all the crazy timey-wimey stuff going on in New York, which hails back to Amy and Rory and their being lost and all the Weeping Angels stuff, so as to write in a way that, hey, we can actually visit New York again, where that story said, oh, New York is off limits from now and forevermore. Never can I go back there. Well, the Doctor has created a deus ex machina to be able to come back to New York in various stories, in various time periods, and I'm happy about that, because I feel like New York, I'd love to see the Doctor going there more often, not like every other episode, but once out of the season, or coming season 10, or series 10, series 11, whatever it happens to be. I wouldn't mind an episode, maybe a two-parter taking place as we had with Daleks in Manhattan and that kind of stuff. Depending on what time period, it wouldn't really matter to me, but I like that we have this Deus Ex or Deus Ex Machina that puts that into play so the Doctor can come back. And again, talking about the overall gist of this episode, I will admit that there was, I didn't feel as scared by the creatures, I guess we could say, air quotes creatures, their brains with eyeballs, I'm thinking little Krang creatures, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reference, and things like that. They're using human bodies as vehicles, and we've kind of seen, in fact, I think it might have been the Husbands of River Song where we saw somebody like rip open their head last year, like sort of down the cross section, the midsection of the face, where all this blue sort of cleaning fluid is coming out, or whatever, the solution that the brains are kept in to keep them moist, I guess, alive. And I remember being really put off by that special effect in last year's Christmas special, where you saw the guy rip his head open like that. It just was like, God, if I was a kid, that would have terrified me. I got scared and plagued by a Twilight Zone episode at the age of somewhere between 3 and 5 years old. Just the guy talking about having to cut his finger off, like his thumb or his pinky finger. That terrified me. That gave me nightmares. So imagine what this would do to me as a kid, seeing people with slits down the side of their face diagonally, and then they can rip open their skulls, and there's like blue gunk in there, and as well as guns, apparently, laser guns and things. That would have terrified me. But as an adult watching it, I didn't feel like there was enough of a threat, enough of a fleshing out of these particular villains, but I do very much like that this was kind of like the first baby steps of introducing these villains to potentially come back. They very much leave it off with, well, you think you can be rid of us, the revenge that our species, our culture, whatever it is, I completely forget the name of it, whatever that amounts to, they will be back. And I hope they actually are. I hope we get to see more of this. The idea, I mean, it's a staple of sort of science fiction B movies. Attack brains, killer brains. Futurama did an episode about that, I think. And so I'm really curious to learn more about these particular creatures, aliens, whatever you want to call them. Even if they didn't leave as engrossing an impression on me as the rest of what was going on in the particular story, with the ghost superhero character, with his alter ego Grant, who is in and out. I mean, it's like Superman 4, where he's in and out of the room. He I'm going to go check on the baby. He goes and puts out a fire and saves some kids. He comes back in. He's got the baby in hand. He hands it to the mother. Uh-oh, there's kids trapped on a Ferris wheel. I'm going to zoom back out again. I loved all of that. I loved all of that. The cat who plays that character, Justin Chitwan, I think is maybe his name, or how it's pronounced. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm butchering it. I was impressed with his sort of superhero persona. He sort of deepens his voice. I don't know if there was any modulation to help that along. But I liked the idea that he had this sort of mild-mannered. He wasn't quite quirky and a doofus. He didn't quite come across as having that kind of Clark Kent, Christopher Reeve level charm. But he did have the clumsy oaf sort of thing, and the problem of trying to keep his identity secret, which the Doctor's kind of like, he's just shy of doing a face palm when he's standing in the room, and here is Lucy, and she doesn't recognize the guy just because he's got glasses. After, I might add, the Doctor's absolutely combustibly brilliant realization that he's talking to little young Grant in the kid's bedroom after trying to set up the air quotes trap, the whole mechanism to allay all the timey-wiminess in New York, and he's about to fall to his death. He comes in the window, the kid thinks he's Santa Claus, or his mother does, whatever like that, and he's reading the Superman comic book, and he's like, so profound is it to the Doctor, look at this. Clark Kent and Superman, they're the same person. Whoa. He's so like downtrodden and disappointed when the kid's like, yeah, everyone knows that. I mean, how could you miss it? But he makes the great point, and that's the great point of the episode. Lois Lane is this crack reporter. She's super uber intelligent. How has this been lost on her? How is it lost on Lucy? She cannot see right in front of her. This guy, this babysitter, this nanny, is the superhero that she suddenly becomes smitten with. She's heard about him. He is like this myth that's going around the city, and then suddenly she's, you know, right in the middle of a story that this guy shows up. Finally, right there in front of her. He whisks her off after they dispatch the villain temporarily, although it may be, brings her back home, and then he has to speed off again, and she's immediately smitten, a la Lois Lane, Margot Kidder from the 1978 Superman film, which came out the year of my birth, and so it's all predestined almost. It's like a predestination paradox that I'd fall in love with Doctor Who so many years later, and it rounds back to my first love of Superman, this kind of stuff. And I mean, overall, I loved the quirkiness of the characters. I loved those hearkening elements going back to Superman and Clark Kent and that dilemma and the Lois Lane. Again, that entire exchange between the Lucy character and the Doctor at the table using the squeezing device, and she uses this backwards and forwards psychological, you know, sort of sparring to get at the heart of who, or the hearts, as it were, of who the Doctor is, of what he is as a person. Maybe she doesn't know his name, you know, Doctor Who is he? But she figures out, she manages to piece together, you know, the way I'm speaking to you, I'm being very domineering, being very authoritarian, and you're not even backing down. You're not, you know, snapping to with your answers. You're not used to being communicated to like this, or at, as it were. So you're used to giving the answers. You know who this ghost guy is because, you know, all of the reasoning she uses off the top of her head. If more people could be like this in the world, there'd be less problems, I think. You know, I think the mass majority of dumb nuts out there are really digging a hole for us all. And you know, I wish people were a little more whip smart like her character is. And it just made me, again, immediately it drew me to her character and thinking companion, you know. And I have to say, you know, in speaking about what we had at the end of the episode, the teaser for what is yet to come, that whole endearing aspect of Nardole looking after the Doctor and making sure that he'll move on and he'll find a new, you know, set his sights on some new sort of direction in his own lives, whatever you want to call it. I love that we have a preview for Series 10, and we hear Bill, and Bill is introducing herself to us. She serves chips. She met Dr. What? Dr. What? He's apparently moonlighting as a professor. He's giving lectures or doing something, teaching. I'm wondering where this is. It's probably not Coal Hill Academy. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But she becomes interested in him, and suddenly she has her eyes open to the grandeur of time and space and all this kind of stuff. And she seems very Ace-like, for those familiar with the classic series. I mean, a lot of people have been saying that just from the way she looks, her costume in some of the early pictures released. And that was my immediate impression as well, but even more so. She comes into the TARDIS. Wow, it looks like a kitchen. Can I use the toilet? What's a Dalek? You know, Doctor What? Professor. If that's not being directly influenced by Ace, I don't know what is. And I would love to see Ace back in the series as well. I'm always a champion for coming back, or rather bringing back any of the classic companions, whether it be Susan, Ian Chesterton, Ace, you know, any of the actors who are still surviving as yet in this new series coming in 2017. I mean, come on, bring them back while we have the opportunity in some way, shape, or form, you know. But so, yeah, I mean, this episode overall, the return of Dr. Mysterio, of course, I've not hit it beat for beat, not doing an in-depth sort of review of it, just my reaction overall, and it's been excitement. Again, the superhero characters, the superhero motif, written almost expressly for me, who is a Doctor Who fan, who is a fan of Star Trek and all these other kinds of things, but most notably, one of my first influences in life, besides maybe Star Wars, was superheroes. And Superman was one of my first action figures as a kid. Spider-Man and Batman were second and third, so it's all coming full circle in this episode, in this 2016 Christmas special, and it was a pitch perfect gift on today of all days, which incidentally, as I'm recording this, it's already past midnight, so I'm getting into my birthday. My birthday's the day after Christmas. Happy birthday to me. Thank you in advance if you type that below in the comments. And so, yeah, just an awesome, awesome Christmas special. It was definitely worth the wait for a year of like no Doctor Who. We had Class for a little while there. Hopefully, maybe we'll get a little more of that in the future. Who knows? Indetermined as of the time of this recording. But at least we got something relating to Doctor Who. Peter Capaldi was in the first episode. We had the Weeping Angels in the last. Oh, spoiler warning. Which, like, what? Didn't make any sense. But, so yeah, Doctor Who is back. It's coming back. We're going to have it next year with Series 10. Cannot wait. All kinds of excited. I have heard that the Nardole character may feature all series long, and that did give me some trepidation and apprehension, much as his appearance in this episode did before watching it. By the end, if Matt Lucas's performance manages to match kind of the evolution of where the character was left by the end of this episode, bring it on. I'm all for it. And Capaldi, sir, you are a master performing this character. I know it is a lifelong character. Not that he'll ever watch this, but I know it's a lifelong character that he was a fan of, the series and everything like that. Probably one of his earliest inspirations. Now he gets to inspire future generations playing the titular character of the Doctor, and he is magnificent. He is magnificent in this role, and I hope we will see him for a long time to come. I am not in any way, shape, or form wishing for the ushering on of his departure anytime soon. This was a brilliant episode. His performance was brilliant. I love the background actors, and I did think, even though the whole brain matter, villain creature thing was not as fulfilling, it was mildly disappointing in that it really wasn't that scary. We didn't learn enough about them. I still thought the human performers who performed the, sort of upright bipedal equivalent of those creatures were well enough in their performances to seem threatening and ominous, even if the rest of it just kind of fell flat and it's left to future episodes to really delve into. And so yeah, Merry Christmas to all, a Happy New Year. If I don't see you before then, because you're probably not going to watch my anime coverage, and otherwise bring on Series 10. Cannot freaking wait, and I'll catch you all later. Peace. And with that, Christmas is officially done. Time to get out the old hat once again.